Hello health lovers, so it's V and still on the urinary system. We have been discussing a whole lot. We talked about the kidney, the functional unit of the kidney being the nephron. We talked about the ureter. We also described the urinary bladder and of course the urethra. So in today's video we are going to be talking about micturation and formation of urine. How is this urine formed? Now, so please do well to pay close attention and derive your notes from here. So let's learn together. Now, what is micturation? Now, micturation is the expulsion of urine from the urinary bladder through the urethra to the exterior. So we can as well say that micturation is urination. So the act where this urine leaves the bladder, passes through the urethra out of the body, is called micturation. Now let's talk about the process of micturation. How does this urine leave the bladder? Does it just leave like that? So there are couples of things that occur and that's what causes urination. Now the first thing we need to know is that the maximum capacity of the bladder is 600 ml. So once the urine accumulated there is up to 600 ml, that is the maximum capacity. But before then, once the bladder gets to 300 to 400 ml, that's in volume, the autonomic efferent fibers is going to send an impulses. When we hear impulses, is called signal. So it's going to send this signal to the bladder, telling the bladder, oh, it's time for this person to urinate. Now, guess what happened? Once these impulses get to the bladder, the detrusal muscles, remember I mentioned detrusal muscles in a previous video, and I also said that detrusal muscles plays a vital role in micturation. So the detrusal muscles is then going to contract. So once this detrusal muscle contracts, it sends what they call urination reflexes. That is when you're going to feel the urge, oh yes, I'm pressed, I need to urinate. And once that happens, the internal urethral sphincter will relax. And remember, when we talk about the internal urethral sphincter, it's controlled by involuntary control. It's under involuntary control. That means we are not the one controlling it. So now, what is going to happen? We are now going to have what they call a voluntary control of the external sphincter. Now, this only happens when the time is right and when the place is right. When you know you're ready to urinate, that is when you voluntarily means you purposely, so you voluntarily release the urine. You get that? And that is called the external sphincter. You voluntarily release this urine through releasing your external sphincter, and that is when urine is going to escape from the urinary bladder through the ureter outside the body. And remember, this external sphincter is very poor in infants. That is why babies cannot control their urine. When they are pressed, they just pass it out because they don't know how to control it. They don't know how to hold it till when it's time to release this external sphincter. They don't know. That is why they urinate anyhow. So as we grow, we now have a full control of our external sphincter. Now, that is how micturation takes place. And remember, the urine can escape when there is no mechanical obstruction. Now, we have talked about the urine, we have talked about micturation. What is micturation? How micturation takes place. So in summary of the micturation, we just know that there are 4 things involved. The first thing is when the bladder gets to 300 to 400 ml. The second one is that it sends impulses to the urinary bladder, causing the contraction of the detrusal muscles and relaxation of the internal urethral sphincter. That is the second one. Then the third one, when the time is right and the place is right, there is going to be a voluntary relaxation of the external sphincter, causing the urine to escape from the urinary bladder to the exterior through the urethra. And the last thing we need to know is that it is poor in infants. That is why babies pass out urine anytime. They don't know how to control it. But when we grow, we'll be able to have this control of our external sphincter. That's so that we can't urinate anyway. We urinate once the time and the place is right. And remember, you can only urinate when there is no mechanical obstruction. So that is it for micturation. Now let's talk about urine formation. How is urine formed? Is it that we just eat food and it comes out as urine without passing through some stages? So we are going to be talking about the mechanism of urine formation. Now, urine formation has 3 stages. So there are 3 stages in urine formation. And remember what we said in the kidney. So if you could flash your mind back to the kidney, then this urine formation will be very, very easy for you to grab. Now the first stage is the glomerular filtration. Remember when we were talking about the nephron, we talked about the glomerular capsule and whatever, the afferent and efferent arterioles. Now the next thing we need to know is the tubular reabsorption. Then the third stage is the tubular secretion. So now let's talk about the glomerular filtration. Of course, we already talked about that, something like that when we're describing the nephron. It has a filtration barrier and whatsoever. So now, the glomerular filtration primarily takes place in the glomerular capsule. Now, the blood going in, remember we say afferent arterioles goes into the Bowman's capsule. Now, this afferent arterioles going into the Bowman's capsule goes in with full pressure because it has a lot of nutrients that needs to be filtered out. And once it is filtered out, it goes out of the Bowman's capsule as an efferent arterioles. Now, these afferent arterioles going into the Bowman's capsule, forming a network of capillary, and in the process of forming this network of capillary, water and small solutes are being filtered out. Now, that is where the filtration barrier comes in. The water and small solutes are being filtered out into the Bowman's capsule, and once they are filtered out into the Bowman's capsule, the clean blood, the filtered blood, will now go out as efferent arterioles. They are out because it is filtered. All the solvents, everything that is there is being out and is going into the nephron. It's going into the nephron, that's the Bowman's capsule, and entering the nephron. So that is the first stage of urine formation. Now, the second stage of urine formation is a tubular reabsorption. We know when we talk about reabsorption, to reabsorb something, to get something back. Now, this nutrient has been filtered, and the filtrate now gets into the tubular. Now, this tubular reabsorption primarily takes place in the proximal convoluted tubules, the loops of Henle, distal tubule, and the collecting duct. Now, what happens in this stage? The filtrate going in from the proximal convoluted tubule, that is the very first part of the tubule that is closer to the glomerulus capsule, that's the glomerular capsule. Now, the body needs some nutrients, right? So already all the nutrients from the blood are already filtered out. So once these things that are filtered out enters inside here, the essential nutrients that the body needs will now go back into the blood. Now, these essential nutrients, we talked about some water, we talked about glucose, we talked about amino acid, because everything is out from the body, and our body, we can't function without nutrients. So all those essential nutrients that the body needs now goes back into the blood. And how does it goes back into the blood? There's what we call a peritubular capillary that is around the nephron. So as the filtrate is moving, the essential nutrient is going back into the blood. It's going back into the blood before getting into the collecting duct. It's going back into the blood. So our body can actually use these nutrients for its activities. Already, we can't live without amino acid in our body. We can't stay without glucose because we need all those essential nutrients, which has been filtered out in the first stage, glomerular filtration. So it has to go back into the blood so that we use it in our body. So that is for the tubular reabsorption. Now let's talk about the last stage, that is the tubular secretion. Tubular secretion primarily takes place in the distal convoluting tubules and also in the collecting duct. Now, what happens in this stage is that the nephron actively adds some substance into the filtrate. And why is it adding these substances? It's adding these substances to enable the waste to be eliminated out successfully. So this primarily takes place, as we said earlier, in the distal convoluting tubules and also in the collecting duct. The nephron will be adding substance. It will be adding substance so that it's going to make it easier for it to pass through the collecting duct. Then from the collecting duct, it's going to come out as urine. Now, the urine is formed, and this urine that is formed is clear and amber. And why is the urine clear and amber? It's because of the presence of the urobilin. That is the reason why our urine is clear and amber. Now, once all these things is formed from the millions nephrons, it goes through the collecting duct, and when it enters into the collecting duct, it's going to go through what we call a papillary. That's when it gets to the minor calyces. Remember when we said in describing the kidney, the minor calyces project into the pyramid to get urine. Now, this urine that is formed from the nephron, because all this nephron is in the pyramid. So once it's formed, everything passing to the collecting duct will now get to the minor calyces. Minor calyces get this urine from all the pyramid, merge it in the major calyces. Then from the major calyces, it gets to the renal pelvis. Then from the renal pelvis, it gets to the ureter, then stores it in the urinary bladder. Then once it reaches its capacity, that's when you have to urinate. It passes out through micturation. So that is how urine is formed. So in summary, what we have just said about the urine formation, we said it has three stages. So you take that down. 3 stages: glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion. Glomerular filtration has to do with filtering the nutrients. Then the tubular reabsorption, it has to reabsorb essential nutrient that the body will need. And the tubular secretion, that is when the nephron will be adding some things so that this urine will be able to come out successfully. And remember, the urine form is clear and amber due to the presence of what? Urobilin. So thank you very much for watching. Do well to like, follow, and share. And that is all for the excretory system, particularly the urinary urinary system. So in our next video, we are going to be talking about the endocrine system. So thank you very much for watching. Do well to like, follow, share and subscribe. Bye.